John Chillibeck, Brunswick News.
Yeah, sorry. I guess my question is similar to Michelle's. I understand what you're saying about the numbers and what you're saying about how expensive their old plans were and unsustainable, and that the timeline had run out on the memorandum of agreement. But the third point of that MOU or MOA says that they'll that three experts will be appointed and that it could examine the proposed plans. And you had just mentioned that CUPE had proposed this CAAT plan, which you said was ridiculously expensive for taxpayers. So if you'd gone through that process, I assume they would have presented their idea of joining CAAT, and you would have presented your idea of them joining one of the three shared risk plans in the province. Why didn't you follow that process that's in the MOA?
Because we ran out of time. The MOA had a timeline on it for the very reason of our concern that there wouldn't be an effort to try to meet it or to try to resolve it in a hearing, but more of an effort to try to delay it. And that's what we found happening, is it became more of a delay. Because if you compare the plans that we're talking about here with a sustainable managed plan that's fair to taxpayers and to the employees, and you compare what CUPE brought to the table after the MOA had expired, but brought to the table, there is no comparison. There isn't anything that's fair to taxpayers in that proposal whatsoever. And it wouldn't take an actuary any length of time. It wouldn't even take an actuary to figure out that this is not going to be sustainable in any way, shape, or form compared to the current situation. In fact, it appeared to be worse. So that's not fair to taxpayers. So you're at a point, the MOA had expired, and the last proposal was completely, I guess, maybe reflective of the true efforts that were being put forward to try to resolve the situation in a fair and equitable manner.
Follow up, Mr. Chillibeck.
Yeah, I guess as an aside, I should be happy because I'm in CAAT. It sounds like it's a gold-plated pension. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about the legal nature of this. How confident are you that you can do this from a legal perspective? Because the difference between at least the two school-based contracts, which I've looked at, and the ones from 10 years ago that you successfully converted to shared risk, is it's actually written in their collective agreement that their pensions will continue so as they are. So isn't that a legally binding document that the government signed? I'm a little puzzled by that. And just as a follow-up to that, how much is this precedent setting in Canada, do you think, what you're doing?
Well, I think, and I'll let our legal advisor speak to the first question, John. I think in the sense of in Canada, I mean, there's a huge liability on taxpayers throughout the country. And I would say CUPE's very position is more nationally based than locally based. And because when we talk to our employees here and they understand, particularly those employees that do not have a pension, but when they understand, they want to be fair to the taxpayers of the province. And they want to obviously have the ability to have a pension long-term and ensure that it's secure. So we can do both here. And my concern is that it's being driven nationally because of your very comment. Does this send a signal across the country that the pension should change? Well, when taxpayers are the ones on the hook and pension plans are not sustainable as they must be, and if you look at trends in other aspects of pensions, as was indicated by our legal colleague here at the beginning, we see that many places have moved to defined contribution. They've moved away from defined benefit because they simply were unaffordable in the long run. And there had to be a balance. And what we have seen is when employees and employers take a vested interest in managing their pension, the outcomes are very good. And when you have a plan like this that actually pays up, if the years are low, down, and the interest rates are low, they don't index anyway. They reduce the indexing, and then they make it up in the following years. So you get back to the balance. But what it doesn't do, and the key factor of all of this, is it doesn't allow the principal to be eroded. So now you have less money to work with, and you just keep spiraling down a hole. That's why the pensions that currently exist need this continually update and continual injection by taxpayers, because you pay indexing regardless, and you whether the interest rates are good or not. So in the good years, when you get it back under this plan, you in the good years on the old plan, you do not have the principal there to get it back. So that's how it's a managed asset. But the trustees, the owners of the plan, are the ones who manage it with the investment provider. It just has worked well, and so any argument to do the contrary is not being based on fairness.
Mr. Wright?
Yeah, just on the legal ability. Sorry about that. Just on the legal ability to make the change, you're correct. There is an agreement within the collective agreement, but the legislation overrides that. So if you look at Section 20 of the legislation of the bill that was introduced today, it does say in the event of a conflict between this act and any contract or agreement, this act prevails to the extent of the inconsistency. So to the extent that there's a collective agreement that says this has to be the pension arrangement, the act says, well, that you must go through this process to join a shared risk plan. So that would be the legal basis on which the legislation operates. That particular Section 20 is common in similar legislation in Nova Scotia and PEI.
Silas Brown, Global TV.
Thanks, Bruce. Just back to the MOA in the collective agreement. Some of the union leadership told me today that the step had basically been reached to move towards this board of actuaries to move into this dispute resolution aspect of the MOA, and then do not worry that moving forward preemptively with legislation will maybe break some trust with with this government, with future collective bargaining negotiations, being that this is something that this is a process that your government agreed to, and now you're saying, well, too bad it didn't happen quick enough. We're just going to go and do the thing that you have been keen on from the beginning. Do you worry that can further impact what has already been a very strained relationship between yourself and organized labor?
Well, I guess what I would state to that, Silas, is that our goal here is to actually fix a problem in the pensions and make sure that they are sustainable. What we saw here were tremendous delays between communication. There was a 7-month gap between one response and another. Even during the fact the MOA had expired, but they were still, we said, well, we'll keep talking, although we have no MOA. And 7 months between proposals and no response. So you have to say, okay, is there any interest in a timeline here at all? Well, there will be now, because that is what the legislation does. It puts a timeline around it. It's clear, but it involves the same process. The actuaries work together. They negotiate the best plan, and you get a result. All we're doing here is saying what was agreed to in the MOA, which did not materialize, will happen under this legislation, which defines the process. So we're still using the actuaries. We're still going through the same process. It's just you can't continually ignore the fact that something's going to happen.
But in some sense, you presuppose the outcome, whereas in the other, you presuppose the outcome to moving to the exact model that you wanted. If that MOA was not working properly, did you sign a bad deal at the time of the collective agreement, and you should have signed a better deal? I just think it may be a tough pill for some people to swallow to see you now moving past that before the deal that you signed has actually, that process has actually been fully worked through.
We signed an MOA in good faith that both parties were interested in finding a sustainable path forward for a pension plan that would work for both taxpayers and employees. It turned out that that agreement was not in good faith because we were unable to keep a timeline. We were unable to get any movement towards a sustainable pension plan. So while you'll say, well, you had a plan that you were proposing because that was what you wanted to achieve. That is true because it works and it's proven to be successful and it's proven to be fair and equitable. The plan that CUPE came back with, last several months ago, was the exact opposite of what we were trying to achieve as a sustainable pension model. So it would have been hugely costly for taxpayers. So it's like no consideration of taxpayers in the province at all. And I don't believe the employees of CUPE feel that way at all. I believe they want a fair pension plan. They want fair, fair benefits, and they should. And I want to achieve the very same thing. And so everything we do is trying to find a balance so that it's not all on the backs of taxpayers. And we work to achieve that because we're seeing all around us the ability is necessary to find sustainability in everything we do. And yes, as we go through these processes, it creates some angst. But as I said here a little earlier, the numbers will speak for themselves. And all we've asked throughout this process is look at the reality of this situation. And for someone in the CUPE leadership to take a position, they don't care about that. They're not interested in whether the taxpayers are going to fund it or not. I just don't believe the members feel that way. So nationally should not dictate what's required here in our province to be fair and equitable to taxpayers and employees.
Alexandre Boudreau, l'Acadie Nouvelle.
Hi, Premier. If the pensions are integrated in the collective agreements of those two locals, and the legislation, as Mr. Wright said, overrides those, despite what you said yesterday, it sounds like you are, in fact, breaking those contracts. It may very well be legal to do so, but are you not breaking those contracts?
No, we had an MOU outside of the contract to solve the pension plan. That was the agreement. That's why the MOA was signed. It was to find a solution to a sustainable pension plan. And we saw no light in that tunnel for that to happen. That's the difference.
Okay. And you said yesterday that the unions were procrastinating during this process, but today the representatives of those unions said that it's actually the government who requested the extensions that you've mentioned, from June 2022 onwards. What would you say to that?
Well, so we had a mutual extension period that went on for 2 months and then another 2 months. So we got into the end of November. And at that point in time, there's been an understanding that this isn't going to solve anything. We're not going to get here. And then when the CAT program was brought in place, it just reinforced the fact that there's no further extensions that are going to benefit because there is no interest to solve an unsustainable pension plan.
Frédéric Camarano, Radio-Canada.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm wondering if government has considered in those discussions any other options than a shared risk plan.
Well, there are other targeted benefit plans, as was mentioned here earlier, but they perform in the same manner. So I think that, while we can argue and there may be a sensitivity around just the name itself, but I think get beyond the name, look at the results and look at what it has done in not only in 10 years. You could argue 10 years when things might have been normal, but they were far from normal. We had a world pandemic for 2 years. We had tremendous volatility in markets, and yet the plan was solid and performed admirably throughout it all. And so let's just look at the reality of what we have here and a solution that works. So you've got to stand back and say, why is it being resisted? Why would CUPE leadership not want to proceed with a plan that is fair to themselves and fair to taxpayers of the province? It just doesn't make sense. But we just cannot have a meaningful discussion that ends in a solution that fixes the pension plan. And that's why we have to move forward in a way that causes and identifies the timelines, the procedures, and the outcome of a plan that truly is sustainable and fair and balanced.
Monsieur Cameron, as-tu un suivi?
Oui. I want to go back on the actuaries. So I want to make sure I understand clearly what you're saying. So did you decide not to go down this route because the outcome you thought was going to come out of it was not suitable for taxpayers?
No, I'm not saying that I thought the outcome. There was no outcome. That's the issue. There was no plan to ever achieve an outcome. That's what the MOA was signed in order to do that. Was basically to say we're going to have a plan and be able to put this forward. That's why the June 22nd was put in place, because there was a concern. It would be a process of procrastination. And that's what we saw. So we're doing the same thing in the analysis, their actuaries, our actuaries, going through the financial process so that at the end of the day, everyone will look at it and say, oh yeah, okay, really, there is a big issue on sustainability here. And then the only debate becomes, well, we think, and I say we collectively, QP thinks, the leadership think, well, taxpayers should just fund it. Well, many people in the province, and the number used to be, and I'm not sure of the current number, but it was around 60% or 65% that don't have a pension plan. And here we in the province, and the people that are paying this are taxpayers. We're trying to find a balance so our employees can have a good pension plan, but not be unfair to taxpayers. There should be an obligation here for all of us to do the right thing by the people that are paying the bill.
Jennifer Pritchard, allnewbrunswick.com.
Hi, Mr. Premier. I just wanted to ask about the management of the funds at Vestcor. I mean, obviously, this is a huge addition to the assets that they'll be overseeing. Has the government had any conversations with them about whether they'll have to hire new people to handle the work?
No, we have not, and it'll be for the as the plan unfolds and the trustees meet, they'll meet with the plan managers and make that decision. And Vestcor will put a proposal forward based on certainly what they've done in the past. They're probably one of the top financial advisors in the shared risk model, but because they have this 10-year experience. But that'll be a decision and a discussion that'll happen during the process.
Do you have a follow-up, Jennifer?
Sure. I mean, you're planning to shift all this money over without knowing whether they can handle the work. I mean, can you sort of talk about what would happen if they can't and what sort of transitionary process would be in place? Well,
I have little concern that they can't handle the work. I mean, their assets are managing, I think, something like 16 billion now, or it's significant. So I'm not really too worried that they can't manage the funds. But obviously, they have to convince the trustees, the board of trustees, that actually are going to be working with them, that they are able to do so. And I guess, and as I repeat, the track record they would have over the past 10 years will be a pretty compelling argument.
Michael McDonald, Canadian Press.
No questions.
OK, thank you. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Voilà la fin de notre séance d'information. That concludes today's technical briefing. Thank you.